Here's a media consolidation story that should have every Colorado voter paying attention. Your local news landscape is about to get dramatically reshaped, and the implications go far beyond what channel you watch for weather updates. Colorado's Democratic leadership is sounding the alarm over a massive corporate acquisition that could fundamentally alter how local news operates in the state. The controversy? Nexstar Media Group, the corporation behind Fox31, just announced they're acquiring Tegna, the company that owns Denver's 9 News, in a staggering $6.2 billion deal set to finalize by late 2026. But here's where it gets controversial. This isn't just another business transaction. Critics argue this represents a direct threat to the independence and quality of local journalism that Colorado communities depend on. Colorado thrives when journalists maintain their independence to pose challenging questions and keep citizens well informed, declared U.S. Senator Michael Bennet in his official response to the Colorado Sun. Federal approval of a merger between 9 News and KDVR's parent corporations would severely compromise Colorado's civic foundation. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston didn't mince words either, taking to Instagram Wednesday to declare that permitting this merger would prove detrimental to journalism and harmful to Denver. So what exactly has these political leaders so concerned? The fear centers around several key issues that could transform local news as Coloradans know it. When media companies consolidate, corporate executives gain increased influence over programming decisions. Staff cuts typically follow, weakening the investigative reporting that holds local officials accountable. Perhaps most troubling, local voices often get replaced by syndicated programming that lacks community connection. To understand the full scope of this story, we need to examine Tegna's origins. Back in 2015, this company emerged as a broadcast and digital spin-off from newspaper giant Gannett, the same corporation that owns the Pueblo Chieftain and the Fort Collins Coloradoan within Colorado's borders. Interestingly, Gannett is currently engaged in an antitrust battle against Google and its parent company, Alphabet, alleging monopolistic control over advertising markets that has devastated local news operations. Tegna was essentially designed for exactly this type of transaction, explained David Folkenflik, NPR's media correspondent, in his interview with The Sun. Consultants actually created the name Tegna because it sounded futuristic while using identical letters to Gannett. Television properties consistently outperformed newspaper divisions financially. And this is the part most people miss. Nexstar didn't become America's dominant local broadcaster overnight. In 2019, they surpassed previous industry leader Sinclair by acquiring Tribune Media Company through a similar mega deal. That transaction required selling off 21 television stations just to satisfy regulatory requirements. Now here's where things get really interesting and potentially alarming for media diversity advocates. Many of those broadcast regulations are currently under review or being actively rewritten by Brendan Carr, President Trump's appointed FCC chairman, who has consistently championed loosening broadcast restrictions. Just this past August 7th, Carr announced the elimination of 98 broadcast requirements he deemed obsolete, outdated, or unnecessary. The Tegna acquisition pushes well beyond current regulatory boundaries in dramatic fashion. Federal rules currently cap any single company's coverage at 39% of U.S. households. If approved, Nexstar and its partners would command 265 television stations across 44 states, plus Washington, D.C., reaching an unprecedented 80% of American households. In June, the FCC began a process to refresh, essentially eliminate, that 39% limitation entirely. Nexstar is essentially arguing the cap should be 80%, more than double the current restriction, Folkenflik observed. That reveals something significant about their ambitions. They're attempting to completely revolutionize the industry structure But here's the counterargument that's sparking fierce debate. Tegna and Nexstar executives contend that technological and streaming giants have already revolutionized everything. Their competition, company leaders from both organizations argue, no longer consists solely of other broadcast networks, but now includes behemoths like Meta, Google, Netflix, and Amazon, corporations not bound by identical broadcasting regulations. Folkenflik acknowledges validity in this perspective. Competition for audience attention and viewership now comes from countless unexpected sources that simply didn't exist 25 years ago. There's legitimate merit to that argument. However, not all those distractions produce news content. Not all those platforms and content creators operate under any public service regulations, obligations, or ethical standards. In their official merger announcement, Nexstar claimed the acquisition would enable them to better serve communities by ensuring the long-term vitality of local news and programming from trusted local sources and preserving the diversity of local voice and opinion. But read deeper into that same announcement, and you'll discover mention of annual net synergies of approximately $300 million from a combination of revenue synergies and net operating expense reductions. Translation: those are layoffs, Folkenflik stated bluntly. It doesn't necessarily have to mean layoffs, but it almost certainly does. He emphasized that Nexstar's track record matters significantly. They don't appear disinterested in television news operations. They seem to be making investments in it. But these deals typically rest on the premise that they'll reduce costs. There's always discussion of synergy, the idea that combining operations achieves more than operating separately. Much of that involves budget cuts. Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser announced Thursday that he harbors serious concerns about the transaction and that his office would closely examine this proposed merger to assess whether it will harm Colorado residents. The national impact spans roughly 35 markets where Nexstar and Tegna currently overlap. Should regulators approve the merger, Nexstar would control Fox31, 9 News, and its sister station, KTVD in Denver, plus CBS affiliate KREX in Grand Junction and Fox station KXRM in Colorado Springs. They're seeking access to double their current American viewing audience beyond what regulations currently permit, Folkenflik concluded. They claim this will enhance their journalistic offerings and voice diversity. The burden now falls on them to prove that case. So here's the million-dollar question that every Colorado resident should be asking. Will this consolidation genuinely improve local news coverage, or will it create a media monopoly that prioritizes corporate profits over community journalism? What do you think? Should we trust corporate promises about preserving local voices, or do these mega mergers inevitably lead to homogenized, cost-cutting journalism that fails communities? The debate is just beginning, and your voice matters in this conversation about the future of Colorado media.